Hey everybody, welcome to SoundBalming. I created this show for people who want to experience a radical, life-changing journey through the sounds of my diverse guests. I hope that each sound you hear on this show will strengthen your faith, encourage your dreams, and challenge you to awaken the greatness within you.
Drop the bombs. Drop the bomb. We're gonna drop the bomb. Drop the bomb. We're gonna drop the bomb. Drop the bomb. We come to drop the bomb. Drop the bomb.
This is a journey into sound. A journey which along the way will bring to you new color, new dimension, new values, and a new experience.
Ladies and gentlemen, the star of the show,
LaMarr Darnell Shields.
Suicide note. Tell my nephew I am sorry. Tell my sister I'm sorry she had to be the one to tell my nephew. Tell her I was afraid of her judgment. Tell my mother I wasn't bluffing. Tell my brothers I was going back to get the brother who didn't survive, the one before me. Tell them that this was my apology to him. Tell my grandmother to please open up the gates. I know this really wasn't the way she expected to see me again, but this is how I am unraveled. Tell her... Never mind, I'll tell her myself. Tell my other suicide notes they asses weren't poems either. Tell my roommate I'm sorry he had to be the one to find the body. Tell the blood, be quick about it already. Tell Ryan, my love, that everything has his name on it. Tell the man that threatened my life I won. Too slow in this human's race. Tell the downstairs neighbors I'm sorry for the thud. Tell Eris I'm sorry I couldn't be the best man in her wedding. Tell Duran he was right, one day I would. Tell Jeffrey I imagine it was him pulling the trigger. Don't tell my little brother, don't tell Rashad unless he asks. Please. Tell my father, if we make it to the same place, could you at least try to talk to me first this time? Tell depression, good game, I almost had you, motherfucker. Tell the psychiatrist, the medicine ain't working. Tell the floor, it was a beautiful final bed, a last pair of arms, a wooden womb of an exit. Tell my feet, stop running. Tell my body, keep the pills down. The volume in my stomach is coming up. Tell the volume, quiet. Don't moan. Tell the pain I said goodbye. Tell goodbye I said hello. Tell Jessica I know. Don't follow me.
Wow, I love that piece. That was requested again from our last show. Hey, welcome to my show. I'm your host, Dr. LaMarr Darnell Shields, in the building, because I'm always in the building, because COVID is outside. I'm the creator of SoundBalming, and my goal with this show is to introduce you to people with ideas that will help you unlock your full potential. You know, in the Black community, there's a negative stigma surrounding mental health. Instead of seeking professional help for conditions such as depression, anxiety, bipolar, many people resort to self-medication, drugs, opioids, alcohol, etc., or isolation in an attempt to solve their own problems. This issue of masking pain is especially prevalent amongst Black men. Speaking from experience, I know how Black men grow up in a culture that tells other people that we're not supposed to cry, that we should deal with our problems in our own way. We should just, as they said to Naomi, the tennis player, just get over it, move on. This only enforces the idea that it's not okay for us to keep hurting inside. You know, I've spoken to countless friends who are afraid to come out and talk about their pain as a fear of being labeled or being weak. They don't want to acknowledge or vocalize their pain, so they sort of keep it inside, as you can see in the reflection of this poem, Suicide Note. You know, this was true for me as a man of color who walked around as if everything was okay in my life when things weren't okay. And I'm a writer, a speaker, an artist, afraid of sharing my true emotion or my well-being. You know, 2 weeks ago, we had Dr. Kevin Washington, who's a great psychologist, and we had Dr. Ballinder, who is a psychiatrist, board certified psychiatrist, come and unpack some of the challenges of dealing with mental health, of dealing with this stigma. Well, my next guest is no stranger to mental health challenges. He not only talks about it, he produced a film and launched a film career, this new film called Normalized, which chronicles his journey through a chaotic childhood to become a successful, community-minded transportation executive. He travels all over the country lecturing, having conversations, and he has a huge following on his podcast called Normalized. His determination to break free from substance abuse and pain goes deeper than that you can only imagine. But prior to that, he was known to be a gifted storyteller. And I love the power of stories because today we have an amazing show at the Reginald Lewis Museum around Black stories around Black men through an exhibit called Man of Change. And so my next guest amplifies his voices of just regular people who are dealing with some of the challenging things on this planet. Who am I talking about? I'm so glad that you asked me. Put your hands together for my man, brother CJ Penny. CJ Penny in the building. What's up, brother?
What's going on, man? I love your energy. How you doing?
Hey, man, you got to have energy, man, because any day above ground is amazing. I went boxing today with my son. Shout out to my son, Mosiah Say Cool. I mean, you have children, man, and so
I do.
Getting this dude in the gym, of course, he came in as CJ mad, face all tight, didn't want to be there. But then
what time was it?
It was only 7:30.
School time. It should be
only 7:30.
Yeah. Okay.
After we hung out last night, man. So, brother, welcome to the show, man. It is an honor. I'm so glad that you decided to hang out with me. You don't know how I know you. I know you through my good friend Mark Clark. Mark Clark, who used to be on the Big Fat Morning Show. I used to be part of the Big Fat Morning Show, and I got a chance just to hear a little bit of your story. And Mark was like, Shields, man, you got to get this brother CJ on because you all have some connections. And the connections is interesting. I think you're from Maryland, but you're living in Chicago. I'm from Chicago, but I'm living in Maryland. I don't even know if you knew that.
I peeped that. No, I did some research. I peeped that. But I was the former chief of transit and transportation for Baltimore City. So, so I'm really connected to Baltimore. I was in Baltimore my entire career before I went to Chicago.
So did you hook some cats up with some bus tickets? You know, Black folks always want to get hooked
up. Man, the circulator was free.
Oh, you held down the circulator.
I held down I wasn't the MTA. I held down the circulator, the taxi, the water taxis, the scooters, and all of that. Yeah.
Well, man, it is an honor to hang out. Hey, man, well, thanks for getting up early. Well, it's not that early, man. I mean, it's early for some people. I got a lot of questions to ask you. My producer shared some questions. My producer, Carrie, shout out to Carrie. Your team sent me some questions as well. Man, I wish that you could have joined us, I think 2 weeks ago when we had this conversation with Dr. Kevin Washington and Dr. Ballander, man. It was so hot in the room. And the reason why I did that show, CJ, is because I got a chance. I met Regina King one time, the actor or the actress that me and you grew up watching on TV, 227, other things that she was on, Boys in the Hood and all of that. And then when I saw that her son committed suicide, and then I read a story about a brother who was the mayor in a city in Maryland, a small town. And CJ, the headline says, openly gay Black mayor commits suicide. Now, I don't know what openly gay had to do with anything with suicide. And so we wanted to get you on there because even though you're not, a profession like they are, in that profession, you have a huge following. We're going to talk about your podcast. You now have parlayed into a film career. Man, I love us as Black men. We got our side hustles, man. But it's all, I don't get it. They just think we all over the place, right? Like, it's all, I'm sure you told your part, like, listen, baby, it's all connected. I'm sure.
It is connected. It started at a young age. But, when you say that, I'm in transportation. So MARTA, which is in Atlanta, I know their administrator, who was an African-American gentleman, I think he just recently stepped in front of a train. So basically, he took his life with, ironically enough, something that he ran. It's an organization that he operated. So it's very prevalent. And I appreciate you wanting to have me on a few weeks ago. So thank you.
Yeah, man. I bring people on here for me, really. People just I really bring on these people just for me. And if they want to hear what you got to say, more power to them, man. So let's get down to business, man. I mean, you saw or you heard that beautiful poem by his brother, man. I love that. It's called Suicide Note. And the reason why I play it again, even though this conversation is really not about suicide, man, my DMs, my messages, when I played that piece, man, it sort of blew up, man. And I wanted to replay it again because as Black men, we need to celebrate one another. Mm-hmm. And as Black men, we hold in a lot of pain. And just like you are a podcaster, now you parlay to the film industry and doing some other things, man. I want to talk about your podcast first. Let's talk about your podcast.
Okay.
which is the same title, correct, of the film, right?
Yeah, everything is normalized. Everything is normalized.
So how did you get involved in podcasting? How did you parlay from transportation to podcast and then film?
I'm still a full-time executive in transportation.
Yeah.
So I still try. I mean, I still do my 40 hours a week or 50, 60 hours a week. So I still fly to Chicago every week. And then come back to Maryland to see the family.
You like to fly jock, Tom Joyner, man. Remember Tom Joyner used to fly from Dallas to Chicago.
Growing up in the DC area, I remember hearing Tom Joyner. But so the podcast came about, and ironically enough, that's what the movie's about. The podcast really came about because of one night that happened in my life. I suffer from bipolar. I also occasionally, and we'll talk about this when I say occasionally, suffer from alcoholism and drug addiction. There was a night when I was in Baltimore, actually downtown, and the entire film is filmed in Baltimore. So big shout out to Baltimore City for letting us do that. So basically, what had happened was I was at a dinner, and I'd had some triggering symptoms, and I went out and drank, and I went out and partied, and I blacked out for a while. And I got in an accident on the Baltimore Beltway going 90 miles an hour. And after that, I was sentenced to basically therapy. And in the therapy, I was diagnosed as bipolar, but also what happened was he said, you need to find something to do with your time that you do drinking and partying and using and everything else. And he's like, you have a really good story. You should actually tell it. And you talk really well. So you articulate. You always love when people tell you articulate well as a black man. But
if we unpack that, they say that to my children. Your children speak so well. Like, how are they?
Brother, you know what the best part of that is? My first podcast episode is called You Sound White. And it talks about experience at Towson University being called nigga and white within the same semester by two different races, and trying to like identify myself within my race and what I'm supposed to be as a black man. So anyway, he said you should start a podcast. And I went out and did research on podcasts. And I noticed within our community, these podcasts are very similar. We talk about like culture, we talk about like sports, we talk about whatever is going on, like this is pop society. But we don't really talk about ourselves. We don't really talk about our accountability. What is our role within the situation? So I wanted to be different. And I knew if a podcast had to be successful because of my business career, you have to be unique. You have to offer a service that people need. So I decided I was going to take a big jump, and I was just going to talk about myself, but not myself from a victim perspective, myself from an accountability perspective. What has my role been in situations in life where a circumstance has happened that didn't like benefit me? Like, what did I do to actually create that circumstance? And I also started it because I wanted to show a different side of black men. I feel like we aren't talked about, and I think we are more than average. So again, in the world of entertainment, you know, we have our typical sex, drugs, sports, and entertainment. You know what I mean? That's what we've been allowed to do. One time I was in Costa Rica talking to a Costa Rican who wanted to come to America to be a trail guide leader, and he said, and he was lighter than me, and he said, I want to go to America, but I'm scared. I said, why are you scared? He said, I'm scared that they're going to think I look like you.
Wow.
Right? Imagine how that is. And I said, it ain't that bad. But at the same time, wow, what have you been told about people like me? You know what I mean? So I feel like the world doesn't understand what we are. Yeah. And I said, okay, I want to be vulnerable. I want to throw it all out there. Because honestly, I know you all feel the same. You're just too scared to admit it in public.
So where did that vulnerability come from? I love Brene Brown. If people don't know, she's like the vulnerability queen, man. Mm-hmm. Where did you get that from? Where you like, I'm just going to be super transparent. I'm going to put my stuff out there and allow people to see me where I truly am. And as I talked about today, I'm doing this show. We do a storytelling series at the Reginald Lewis Museum. And this exhibit sponsored by Ford and sponsored by Smithsonian. It's about men of courage. It's about people like you, CJ, who are unapologetically black, unapologetically vulnerable and putting their stuff out there. You know, talk to me about that process of just putting your stuff out there for the entire world to see.
Yes, I am a proud, unapologetic black man. I mean, let's just state that first. I am. And I see what the world wants to put me in this box, and I will not go in that box. And so, what made me be, it's my mom probably. She taught me at a young age. I didn't grow up with my father. I grew up with my mom and my older brother. And she taught me at a young age to like stand up for yourself. And she had to stand up for herself. She had a very tough life, a very unfair life. And so she instilled a lot into me. But one of the things that we did at a young age, we volunteered. And I'll never forget going, I was from Germantown, Maryland, and we volunteered for a group called Germantown Help. We took meals to poor people. I took meal to a trailer park. And I'll never forget the redneck opening the door. And me as this poor black kid giving him some food. And he kind of had this look on his face. And I'm looking at him like, we all in the same place. And I felt like we were both vulnerable there. You know what I mean? And because we were both vulnerable, I was like, there's power in vulnerability. When you put it out there, it's not a weakness. It's a strength. And I'm living proof of that. The more I put out there, there's nothing you can throw at me. It's already out there. Yeah. And it's free. I mean, it's really free. And it's a fear that we have of being vulnerable that prevents us from actually seeing the truth. But once you step into that, you realize there's not really much you can do.
Yeah. Well, you bring up the vulnerability piece. I want to jump to something else. Black masculinity. So, you know, there's an expectation surrounding Black masculinity, such a requirement to be strong, to be stoic, have often prevented Black men from seeking mental health care. You know, did you fall in that same trap? And then if so, how did you then overcome it?
I'll say something that's not popular. Yeah, I grew up on hip hop music.
Yeah. Love it, man.
I mean, I grew up on it, but I grew up on all of it. I mean, I was more of an outcast, you know, Mos Def type of person.
Yeah.
But
here.
Yeah, if I'm young, I don't have a father, I'm hanging with my boys, we're drinking, and we're listening to Biggie, how do you think we're going to act? You know what I mean? Like, there's a masculinity that comes with it. And when you're growing up in the suburbs versus the city, you feel like you have something to prove because people from the city may say, oh, you're soft. You know what I mean? There's this, it's embedded in us. It's crazy. And yeah, that was something that I definitely would have to deal with. And I got in fights when I was younger. I got into trouble when I was younger. I was always like a smart guy who did the stupid decisions.
Those are hard, man. When I was a teacher, you know how some teachers, they look at you like, man, you're smarter than this.
Such a waste.
There's kids like you who like, you're really, because you know teachers like, come on, Jermaine, you're smarter than this. And I know Jermaine like, no, Jermaine is not. But you look at CJ like, CJ, you're smart. Those kids to me, I'm putting on my teacher hat now, with kids who, they knew this stuff. They'd be like, Mr. Shields, I know this. I want to do something else. But you said a smart kid who still make these dumb decisions. And I don't think then I put on my researcher hat from the brain development pieces that our brains aren't fully developed. So then we do make these dumb decisions. Then my third hat is we're very impulsive.
Yeah. I love it. My wife is a principal in Baltimore City.
Okay.
So I know all of it. Like, and I know the adolescent brain. I never went to school for it, but I know it, and you're absolutely right. So yeah, it's. I'm sorry, I cut you off there, but it's
no, that was it. It was really about you talking about that kid who's being intelligent, but then they make some decisions.
So you know what that is? You know that comes from for me, and this is probably we went when we're writing like press releases or writing documents for me and stuff like that go out to the public. We go through this difference between traumatic and chaotic. Like, was it a traumatizing childhood for me? It was hard. It was very hard. And there were a lot of things that I went through. But my mom was always there steadfast. And when I think of trauma, I think of like as a parent, if there's been trauma exposed to your kid, you feel like you're responsible for it. And so using a word like traumatic was off-putting for me. But using a word like chaotic, it was chaotic. I sometimes didn't know where my meal was coming from. Or if my boys were going to let me borrow their clothes so I could get to school. Or if I missed my bus because I took public transportation because I went to a school out of district to go to a better school. I just lied about my address. Like, will it take me 2 or 3 hours to get to school? Will I get to school and feel insecure because I'm at a white school and I'm a poor black kid?
Yeah, so people, you got to pass on the way going. Like I don't know if you know Chicago that well, but I went to De La Salle at the time. Housing projects huge. So people like, oh, you went to De La Salle, but I had to fight the dudes on the way into the school from the project, calling me, nigga, you think you better than us. Then I had to get into the school and fight the white kids, nigga, you think you better than us. Then I had to leave the school and walk past the same kids in the housing project. Then I had to get home and then I didn't have the tools to then reflect on what the hell just happened to me. And then CJ, I had the parents. It wasn't like I had a parent that I can unpack or my boy. I didn't share with my boys until I wrote my book. And then they started saying, man, we went through the same thing. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about black men, because we're going to go to the clip in a second. Let's talk about, what advice you have for black men who, just like you and I, we went to these great schools, we had these great experiences, but man, deep down inside, man, we knew we didn't belong. We belong academically, but it was like there was no support around us.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. I grew up in the suburbs. I didn't have to go through gang infested areas. So when I was on the bus, I had to fight my mind. That doesn't stop. And that's like a precursor to like bipolar. Like I didn't know what was going on with me. I just knew that's what I was battling every day on that bus ride. So that's one of the things, like I try to expose to people, I am you. It is okay to be you. If you are scared to be you, come to me and I will help you through this process. I was just recently, me and my team were just recently awarded the best short film at the DC International Film Festival 2 weeks ago.
We're going to pause that, brother.
And it's a big deal. It's a big deal. It's my first film. You know what I mean? And the first film wins because the first film is authentic and it's about something that really matters. And people want to be helped and people want, to hear the truth. And so, when I circle back to the trailer park situation, I realized the strength and vulnerability. So it swung back into the podcast. Okay, I want to be vulnerable and I know who needs this most. It's crazy because when you do like your market analysis, and I'm actually in the process of now Normalized will become a TV show. So don't be surprised when you turn on your TV or your laptop or your streaming device. That's something that will be happening.
Yeah, I thought you were going to say, don't be surprised if my agent calls your agent and we want you to do a guest appearance role. Don't be surprised if we call you and we're like, hey, Dr. Shields, we need you to do it. That's what I was hoping you were about to say, but you didn't say you were thinking it. I know you were thinking it, but I get it. We got that connection. But finish what you're saying.
No, I'm trying to slip in plugs every now and then. But God, I just lost my train of thought with your joke.
No, you're talking about the TV show. It's going from the TV show.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess basically what I'm trying to say is I'm trying to let brothers know that it's okay. So at the film festival in DC, when the film premiered, and it premiered with a block of 5 other films. And at the end, there was like a question and answer session. And it was amazing because, pretty much all the questions came to Normalize. And it's because it was something that people aren't used to seeing, which is just, we think we're honest. We're not honest. I'm going to say what your truth is, but I'm not going to say what my truth is.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so, yeah, I can maybe look at you and judge you a little and get a little bit piece of information and kind of understand what your truth may be. But what about me who's denying that I'm just like you? You know what I mean? And that's what I'm trying to get to. And the reason why is because the more we're able to understand each other and show empathy towards each other, it's harder to hate somebody when you're empathetic. It really is.
It really is. Well, what we're going to do, we're going to pitch to the film. We're going to show a trailer.
Okay.
For those that are there, for those, welcome. If you just joined me, I'm Dr. LaMarr Darnell Shields, the host of SoundBalming podcast with my man CJ Penny in the building. Podcast of Normalized Film, Normalized TV. If you have some questions, drop them in the chat. We're about to take a look at the film. We're going to do watch an excerpt. We're going to come back and ask Brother Penny some questions. Stay tuned. Here we go right now.
It's never been anything significant about me. Always felt average, and a little uncomfortable in my own skin. I do know that one night in particular changed the way I view my life forever.
I'm sorry, I shouldn't have had alcohol served.
Just in my head, I'm 30-something and I don't feel like I've done much with my life.
Just come with me. Come on.
But can a man love his wife, his kids, home, and still not want more? Still hate himself?
You have to learn to love yourself. If you can't do that, then we can't do this.
Opening up and being vulnerable can be pretty difficult. Problem is, we don't allow ourselves to see what's under the mask. I want you to know, I'm just like you. Just trying to become normal. It's never been any.
Wow, man! Watching it over and over again, I just imagine me being in that film. No, I'm just playing.
Because our stories are the same. We come from the same place, man. We come from different locations geographically, but we all have the same trauma that came in our families. As Blacks, it all started in one place.
So let's talk about the clip. Then also, because I'm into film, I'm into documentary, so I'm gonna add some nerdy stuff about.
Let's go for it. Let's just go for it. Let's go.
All that.
Let's go.
Let's talk about the film itself, man. Let's talk. How did you pull that together? Because what I know from what I read about you, you're a podcaster. You have the transportation background, and then I think someone approached you about doing it. Let's talk about how this came together.
So the podcasting came because I needed to do something with my downtime. I parlayed some time that I wasn't really working at my private sector job, and I just started working on the podcast. So I was hustling, you know what I mean? And then, but the podcast was unique enough, it was different enough, it was valuable enough that I got through a mutual connection, got in touch with a director of cinematography named Damien Core, who had a director named Ziad Fodi, and then we brought on the greatest person in the world, Alexander Cesar Bellamy, who's the producer of the film. And we were able to basically say, okay, your podcast is good, but it actually could be visual. You know what I mean? How do we turn this into a story? And so I was like, oh, I got all these ideas. And I had all these ideas. I thought I knew what the hell I was doing. And so I was like writing out the script, and I'll never forget throwing it to Damien. And Damien was like, what the hell is this? and I got really down on myself because it's what I do, because I'm bipolar. And I get down on myself. And I have the catastrophic thoughts, but the sky is falling when the sky is not falling. When you have to breathe and take a step back and realize that you are where your feet are and everything is okay. Just try it again. Don't quit. Try it again. I tried it again, and I was just a little different about the approach. And Damien came back and said, "This is legit." We put together a script. It took a while to get us off the ground. That's why I call Alex the greatest, because when we brought her on board, she allowed us to actually get a thought, a script, and turn it into a production. And we did all this during COVID. We did it within a year. It was 90% Black team. Yeah, it was dope. And, walking on set for the first time, because I've never done this before. And when you see 40, 50 people around with all this professional equipment, and I had a behind the scenes person with me, who's a photographer, and he whispered in my ear, he's like, "You said you were making a movie, but this is legit." And I'm like, of course it's legit, because everything I do, I care about what I do. Let's have some self-pride in ourselves. Let's care about our work. And so we just created a film. And you see a film get put together in so many different pieces. And it's wild to watch it get put together. And I'll be honest, I brought a different perspective. I am a private sector businessman. I am. So I brought that to a creative world. And there were clashes. There were clashes with me and the director. Director of cinematography, because the way I think isn't how they think, even though I do have a creative side. So there were clashes. We had to come to people understand this is my life. We're making it Hollywood based, but it's still my life. You know what I mean? And I'm putting myself out there. And it's wild to watch your life get put out there, but it's scary. But again, you're vulnerable, so it's empowering. But you get put together. And I'll never forget watching it. And I was like, oh my God. I didn't think it would turn into this. I had no idea. And I'm not gassing it, but it's really that good because it's that different. And people, my boys will watch it and they'll watch it with their wives and they were uncomfortable. And I love it. And then I've seen tears come out of people's eyes. I've heard a collective gasp in the movie theater. And that didn't happen during the other films, because people are so in touch with it because they know it's true. And it's just being honest about it. And so we just, we put it together, we made the film, and just voila. It wasn't easy, it was hard. It was hard still working 40 hours a week and now turning your life to trying to produce a film. But this is a point for really quick.
No, go ahead.
For risk takers or for people who are scared to take risk, take the risk. You don't know what's going to happen, but at least you said you did it. And it's really important to do that. Don't be scared to chase your dream. I was 37 when I started my podcast. Never thought it would turn into a movie or TV show about my life. But that's what it's becoming. And so just do it, man. Just do it. You only get one chance.
So someone is dealing with bipolar. Someone now who has opened his life up to the world and who's going to open his life up even more with books, more podcast hits, and this film. how does someone like you who deals with bipolar disorder handle all those things that are going to come your way and that have been coming your way? Because I'm listening to you talk about this is my life. Like I think about Will Smith when I love Will Smith's book. Shout out to Will Smith, the book Will, one of the best books in my opinion out now. And he talked about when he met Muhammad Ali. He didn't know he was going to play the role. And his daughter was like, my dad wants to meet you. And he thought he was just coming to meet Muhammad Ali. He's like, no, you're going to play my role. And then he talks about getting into this character and taking it. And so the pressure that it came. So someone like you who was dealing with bipolar disorder and then now having to be in the public's eye, how does someone prepare for that?
Let's take a step back first and explain to people what bipolar is.
Thank you.
And what it is not. And the one thing I would like people to understand, it is not a personality disorder.
I love before you move on. So this is what we have in common. You don't know this, but I'm gonna share with you. When people, and we talk about hip hop. Common interviewed, I cannot think of my sister's name who's in Cuba. It's gonna come, Asada Shakur, and he was asking her about love. And the very first thing she said, CJ, I'm gonna tell you what it's not. And I love that you're going in that direction because we're expecting something different. So I just want to pause, and I love how you went and said, let me tell you what it's not, then I'm gonna tell you what it is. So go ahead.
It comes from my life being in the public sector and talking to the public and getting them to understand where I'm coming from so they don't want to kill me when I walk out of a meeting. But what it's not a personality disorder. I don't have multiple personalities. I have highs and lows like you. Mine are just exaggerated. Exaggerated to a point where it can get me institutionalized. I've been at Shepherd Pratt for a weekend, which is a mental institution in Baltimore, for those who don't know. I've been in jail. So what bipolar is mania, or if you're bipolar 2, it's hypomania, and depression. And we all kind of know what depression is, but it was interesting because earlier you talked, what did you say? You said there's a characteristic trait that you put out there, but I was actually thinking that technically is a characteristic of being depressed. It's not its own thing, it's depression. So like not being able to sleep. You know what I mean? That is actually a characteristic of depression. So we all kind of know what depression is. We all sometimes think it's just laying in your bed and just not wanting to get out. And maybe the fact that you can't focus on anything during the day. You know, there's a lot of characteristics for depression, but the mania is the key part of bipolar. The mania is that energy that comes, that compulsivity, that impulsivity, which is why a lot of times people who are bipolar do resort to drugs or alcohol. Because they have this energy, maybe they're trying to calm it. So alcohol is a great way to calm it. Or a person like me, I love my energy. So maybe I have a problem with cocaine because I'm chasing a high that my body naturally gives me. So there's different characteristics, but those are the two fundamental characteristics. So just know that 1, it is not a personality disorder, and 2, it is mania or hypomania, and we all know what that is, like being maniac or something like that. And depression. So those are the characteristics that feed into it, but they have to come at a certain time with each other over a period of time, and they have to be consistent. So it's not that you got it once in your life and you're done. No, it's with you, and it's coming to you. Some people have it seasonal. I get it monthly. I get it's wild. I'm kind of wild, and sometimes I'm too much for people.
You know, it's interesting that, man. There's a brother who used to run. I ran a school at Johns Hopkins, called the Praise Academy. As a Saturday school, and we a brother named Antoine, who I love this brother, man. He battled, he transitioned during the COVID pandemic at the height of it. And I remember, CJ, I was on the road, man. I was on this before COVID. I was on planes, and I'm dealing with issues around equity and race and culture. So you know what I'm dealing with on a day-to-day, and I got to come in with a smile. And I went through this one day, man, and I said to him, Shields, can you imagine feeling like that every day? I just paused, man, and I was like, man, I appreciate you pulling me back. Because again, I'm in this space with this brother. Right. I'm witnessing certain things, and I'm going through what he says that I'm dealing with it's almost like the book Black Like Me, the whole story where the dude gets dressed up like a white guy, like a black guy, the white guy, he travels all over, and then he sees some of the challenges, the external, not the internal, but the external challenges that goes on.
So the irony is, like, you deal with, I'm colorblind. I deal with that every day. You know what I mean? So you learn to live with it.
Yeah.
You do learn, but the irony is before you know you have it, you do things to cope with it. So you do start drinking, or you act out compulsively. You may be addicted to sex. Like these are real characteristics of people who have bipolar. You may be really creative and then shut off for like 2 weeks at a time. But you know, you do have to, you have to deal with it, and you deal with it I deal with it every day. It's a struggle. You know, people can look at me, and what I want to do is show a different side of black men. First and foremost, I want to say to you, black men, yes, you should be looking up to me, because if anything, if you're chasing money, I make good money. I make really good money at what I do. And look, am I a professional athlete? No, none of us, not really a lot of us are going to be professional athletes. But do you want to be an executive at an engineering firm? You know what I mean? Do you want to manage a $5 billion capital budget? Because that's what I do. Like, and these are things to aspire to. You know what I mean? Like, this is what we can be if we focus on ourselves and our education and stuff like that. But I struggle. I struggle every day. I mean, I was out of therapy for a year, and therapy, in my mind, is a lifelong process.
Yes.
Because life is always changing. And every 5 years, 10 years, you become a different person. I know I'm different than when I was 30. How old am I? 32, 42. You know what I mean? I know I was different 10 years ago. So, like, therapy is like a lifelong process. I went without my therapist who passed away, a black man. And I recommend you, if you're going to get a therapist, try to find somebody who you think you'll be comfortable with and you can talk to and be honest about. Because if you're not honest in therapy, it makes no point to go. I found a black man because I have daddy issues. Because I don't have a dad. I'm always trying to find a black man in my life. Found a black therapist. He was great. He passed away. Lost him. And I struggled. I really struggled without that therapy. So I you know, there's medication. I'm not a fan of the medication. You'll hear this a lot with people with bipolar. Kanye West is a perfect example. Like, he's bipolar. Like, it's watching him is a beautiful thing.
Have you watched the documentary? Have you been watching?
And I tell people, when you watch it, like I tell my cousins are knuckleheads. They don't want to listen to me. Like, they're like, he's driven. I'm like, he has mania. You don't have what he has. He has a science. He has a chemical imbalance that gives him extra energy to do what he does. Like, he just does, and he's creative with it. And you'll find that most bipolar people are very creative. They have the mania. They have this drive, but there's a downside to it. It's a double-edged sword. And so, the Kanye documentary was it was absolutely amazing. But I tell people, when you watch it, read up on bipolar, then watch it through those eyes. Watch it through that lens.
That's some great advice. That is some great advice.
Then you see, do your research before you engage in something, right? You do that all the time. You're about to engage in a TV show. Do your research first. And he's definitely, and so I want to show a different side of black people that show that we can be professional, that show I have the same issues that white America you have, because bipolar affects 50 million people across the world, or I guess across the world, and it doesn't matter your race, it doesn't matter your gender, your sexual preference, wherever it is you think you are, doesn't matter any of that. Like, when it comes, and it's with you, and you have to figure out how to deal with it.
Wow.
And it's hereditary. So yeah, maybe some certain people are more suspect to it, but you know, you have to figure out a way to deal with it. But at the end of the day, it's okay. Because if everybody in the circle drew their stuff in the middle, you take yours back. You know what I mean? So at the end of the day, and that's kind of like what you said with your boy. He was like, imagine feeling it every day. You took your problems back. You're like, I'll keep mine. I'm
like, that's what it's like.
I'm good. I'm straight.
But you said a whole lot. So we talked about Kanye. You talked about your therapist. But we also know, you know, CJ, lack of access to culturally responsive and appropriate mental health care, along with undocumented or documented, documented racism and bias within the healthcare system, have made some people like us less likely to seek treatment. What advice do you have for others who may be apprehensive in getting the help that they need? Because now you are about to enter a world, you're a filmmaker, you're about to be in a space where people like you can lean over to Kanye West like, yo, homeboy, listen, you and I come from the same area. So what advice do you have when people are trying to find someone to get get the support that they need?
It's funny you said that. I get mad when I hear Dave Dash say F the Grammys.
Yeah.
Because last year he was probably all up on the Grammys, trying to be in it.
Yeah.
Like we need to focus on what's important. Grammys are important. You know what I mean? But when you have that platform, what are we doing to give back? So many people allowed me to get here. I need to make sure that I give back. I just have to. I have to. It's imperative. So, when I was in DC and I was talking to the crowd, I stopped and said, for the Black men out there, if there's a man that that's like me, or if it's you that's like me, it is okay for you to be like this. It's okay. Tell somebody. Just talk. Talk to anybody. If you can't talk to anybody, come and talk to me. But it is okay to be like this because you are not alone. You are not. We all go through the same struggles. We go through insecurities. We are, for 400 years, we were basically torn from our families, and we wonder why Black men still leave their families. It's actually ingrained in us. We don't realize the power of culture and what happens every time a generation is born from the previous generation. But we were torn apart forever. And we now do it to ourselves. White people don't even have to do it to us anymore. We do it to ourselves. That's how powerful slavery was. But we all suffer from it. White people suffer from it. It's a culture issue. They still suffer from it. They have their own issues. So it's like, it's okay. We have our issues. I have a mental illness. You have a mental illness. It's not the end of the world. You know what I mean? We can manage it. And there is greatness in your illness. Trust me. When you get that mania, when I'm up at 3 a.m. writing or doing a podcast while everybody else is sleeping, you know what I mean? That's my chance at being, nobody wants to die. You want to leave the world with something that was meaningful. And like, part of doing this is like for my kids to know that I existed, that I was a person, that I was real. I was real. I was here. So,
that legacy is important, man. And you're doing it. I appreciate you talking about how do you manage and thrive through this diagnosis. For those that just joined us, I am hanging out with filmmaker, podcaster CJ Penny, who has an amazing film out right now called Normalized, working on tons of projects. If you have not checked out the trailer, I encourage you to do that. Speaking of that, where can my viewers view the film? Or is it fully out? I know you shot.
I'm gonna keep y'all to a secret that I don't tell anybody. My producer's probably gonna get mad and everybody's gonna get pissed at me. Oh well. Like I said, take risk. If you go to normalizedproductions.com and then you'll see 3 heads, and that's my logo, it's 3 heads. There is a section called the movie. So just click on the movie head. And then go to the drop-down menu and it says on the drop-down menu either movie or film. If you click on that, actually find the film. Now, why I can do that? Because festivals like, oh, you want our validation, so you have to premiere it us, or if you show it anywhere else, you don't get our validation. It's a good product. It's a business move. It's a good product. People want to see it. If you're listening to this show, you can go there and watch the film. And I guarantee it'll be probably some of the best 22 minutes that you spend in your life. And I'm not saying that from an arrogant point. I'm just saying I can't believe how great this turned out with a team that was so smart, so dedicated, and probably all felt a little bit of the story too. Everybody jumps on board now. They're like, I want to be a part of this because it's a part of me. You know what I mean? They feel that. They feel that connection and where we're trying to take this. So take 22 minutes out of your life and try something different.
22 minutes. So talk to me about the process. So you have no filmmaking background.
No.
You're dropped into
I have
this
no podcast background.
Cameras, lights, action, man. What are some things that surprised you about filmmaking that you didn't know? And then what was some things that you just like, so this is what happens here? This is what goes on in filmmaking?
The amount of, it's a production. I manage what's called a program. So I manage a bunch of projects that create a larger program, right? And basically a production is a program. You have a bunch of little different pieces that all create this masterpiece. I've learned the different team terms like the grip art, the grip key guy, and you know what I mean? And then you got your assistants who will do things like just go get you coffee. But then you have your director of cinematography, you have your director, you have your producer, you have your makeup artist, you have your sound people. There's just so many different pieces. So I work in the engineering field. And what I love about the world you live in is everything is placed there for a reason. if you take a step back and think about, wow, even this building, every corner is there for a reason and it's serving a purpose. So, you know what I mean? And when you walk into this production, you see all these people and you're like, wow, it takes this many people to do this. So the first thing is that. Second thing is nothing is shot in order. So you basically shoot what makes the most sense. If you have a location close to this location, you don't want to do a location move, you know what I mean? Because you're trying to save money, you got to shoot here and you got to shoot at these times. So the logistics of putting it together is hard.
You know, let me stop you right there, man. I want to add to that. Tyler Perry was sharing a story about what he did for Color Girls. And I think that they shot it in New Orleans. And it was so funny because he had Felicia Rashad, Janet, he had all these amazing women, even though he's Tyler Perry. But, you know, when you look at the body of work of these women, and he was saying he was on the roof, and I'm almost certain it was New Orleans. So somebody can tell me in the chat if I was wrong. But the story is going to be on point. And it was on the rooftop. And they were trying to get this shot before their son was coming. He was like, we got to get this shot before the sun comes up. Because if the sun comes up, we're going to lose money. I got to pay for all these people. And he was like, they were getting through the lines. They had struggled. And I think and it was interesting. I think it was a very emotional scene, if I remember correctly, on that rooftop. But he said when he saw that sun coming up, he said he thanked his ancestors, he thanked everybody who was like, yes, we made. So to hear you say, because I've been a part of productions, nothing to this extreme. I produce shows and I did this one documentary, but to hear you say it's not shot in sequence, it's shot whatever makes sense, which is interesting. So
the sun is a big deal, though. The sun is a big deal. The sun ruled our day. I mean, the sun rules everything. So the sun is a big deal.
So you, like me, you learning, like my kids and I, when we go see a movie, CJ, we wait until the very end. Because a lot of times some filmmakers throw some at the end. Yeah. But we watch all the credits. All of these people.
And that's how you know it's a good film, the more credits there are.
So thank you for sharing that. So we're watching this. And so you're learning all of these, what people do and what they say. So, but let's talk about what do you expect people to, how do you expect people to feel? What do you want people to do? What do you want people to say when the credits go up and they're walking out into the parking lot or they're turning it off on their computer now? Because we know with technology, you know, what do you want them to say? How do you want them to feel? How do you want them to respond after watching the film Normalized?
So I won't name the location of a director of a PBS station who just recently happened to see the film. And he said he just sat and processed what he just saw. And to me, that really reached me. And I've seen it all. I've seen the tears come out of people's faces. I've seen people have come up and hugged me. People have come up and thanked me. But when somebody just sits and processes what they're seeing, that means they're really reflecting on themselves. You know what I mean? And that's what I really want people to do. I want people to reflect on themselves. Because remember, it's about a lot of things. It's about a black man. It's about growing up black. It's about stigmas. It's about mental health. It's about race. It's about sex. It's about everything. There's a lot to unpack there. But at the end of the day, you know, we're still human, and this is a human experience. And so I want you to remember that I'm like you and you're like me because we're human. And I want you to sit and reflect on yourself. And then when you reflect on yourself, you're probably more likely to give your neighbor a little more empathy. You know, you just get tired of all the drama and the pain and the hurt and the evil that happens in the world. Like, how do we fix it? I'm not going to fix it. It's not my job to fix it. My job is to try to help the next person as much as I can, or as many people as I can. And that spreads like a tree. You know what I mean? And I don't know, maybe in 1,000 years, if humans haven't killed themselves, we're in a better place. But, you know, I want us to look at it and be like, I get it. And you know what? I need to be more honest with myself.
How much control did you have over the film? I mean, you're on the set. They're like, this is your story, but this is your story. But how much control did you actually have? And then how did you feel relinquishing control to other people?
I am type A. I'm control freak. I like being in charge. There's certain things I'm learning about myself.
You know, somebody's watching this that knows you. Like, yep,
that's him.
I don't need to hear nothing else.
but I am in charge. Like my job, like I'm in charge. You know what I mean? Like, so it's just like, but when it's your life, you're like, but that's not happening. And then the counterpart is like, but we need people to like it. I'm like, people will like it because they're gonna feel it. You know what I mean? So I'm coming with my stubborn views, and I have to learn. Like I said, I can be too much. You know what I mean? Like I have to learn to take a step back. And there's certain people who know how to talk to me, who know how to talk me down, and know how to get me to recenter, and then I can go back out and lead the way I need to lead. It's hard. You know, when I was in DC, and I told people, if you're ever going to be making a film about yourself, don't. But it's hard because what works with Normalized is it's authentic. If you take away any authenticity, now there's things I don't share. So actually the story is probably more G-rated than, which is crazy, than what really happened. You know what I mean? But if I take away the authenticity, you'll know, and you won't connect with it the way you're meant to be. So if you're fighting for something for a purpose. So I don't want to put in BS because I know I'm being authentic, and I know people respond to authenticity. And you have to trust your gut, and you have to be willing to die on the hill for certain things. There's certain things you got to realize it's not worth it because you got to keep the team together and don't want people to quit on you. But, you know.
Do I know we have this production today, and I have a director, and I have these story coaches, and I have these other people, and even though I'm the producer, I have faith and trust in them. They're going to do it, but then it's going to fall on me when it comes to. So I know the feeling of arguing with the director, arguing with the talent. Speaking of talent, I want to know what role did you play in choosing the talent, and also arguing with the other folks. So it looked like you were about to say something, but I wanted to know: did you have any say on choosing the artist or the actors?
For my film, I chose him specifically.
Okay.
And I hope that I have launched the career of Julian Foster because he's.
Hey, that's what Spike. Listen, Spike. A lot of folks owe Spike. I don't know if they've taken Spike out for eating.
Well, you know, like when I talk about like at work, I am only as good as the people who I've created who become better than me. Yeah. You know, it's not about where I become. It's about the people who I've like helped who become better.
Well, tell me about the brother you just mentioned.
Huh? Like,
tell me about this brother that you just mentioned. You
Julian Foster. So he's down in Fort Myers, Florida. He sent an audition tape in. It was pretty much silent. I mean, he had to read some of the script, but it was like 90% of what he sent in was just silent. And I was like, that's what it's like to be in your mind in the acting that he was doing. You know what I mean? And there was something about him. And then when he comes up and why he does such a great job, he's like, because this is like my story. It's not hard to act, you know, when it's my story. And I'm telling you now, it's all of our stories. We have so much more in common if we just learn to compare it and not compare out. See what we have in common with each other rather than seeing what we don't have in common. And it is our story. And if it's not your story, it's your brother's story, it's your mom's story, it's your father's story. You know what I mean? It's one of them. It's 1 degree of separation. It's in your family. And so Julian he was just a great actor. He just like it doesn't happen without Julian. It doesn't happen without Alex. It doesn't happen without Zion, the director. It doesn't happen without Damien. Like what I was saying, like you have to have trust. You have to trust your people. You know, that's important. In any leadership, you have to trust your people that they're doing their job. And that not only do you trust them, that you're going to rely on them and you're going to run through a wall for them. So they run through that wall for you. And you know, that's just what we did on the set. We fought. But oh God, we fight. We still fight. I fight. But at the end, it's because we all care about it. And we know what we're on the brink of. Like we know what's about to happen. Because nobody's doing this, you know, and we're different. We're just different.
That's a beautiful place to be in, man. To be in that space when you know that it's like Dr. Wayne Dyer said, it's nothing like an idea. It's nothing like it's nothing like an idea getting a hold of you and not the reverse. When you can't go to sleep, when that idea just wakes you up in the morning. I tell people the alarm clock doesn't wake me up, purpose wakes me up. It's nothing like an idea that just keeps following you over and over again. And you just know that you can, like, this needs to manifest.
So when you do with that idea that's following you, there's a kid's book. I read to my daughters all the time, what to do with an idea. So when that idea is following you,
is it a white book? Is it a white book?
It's an Asian book.
Yes.
Yes. And it's probably my favorite book. It's a kid's book. It's my favorite book.
So it's interesting you say that when you think about these stories, they are kids' book. When you think about, and not to get religious on us, most of the religious prophets hung around young people. when you think about these books, these narratives, these parables, even though they're written in basic language that we all can get, a lot of times we want to look at these technical books, but what to do with an idea, that book is upstairs on my shelf, man. That's what I'm saying to you.
Yeah.
And so again, someone gave it to me when I came up with this idea to work with Dr. King's barber, Mr. Nelson Malden, who I felt nobody knew his. You're Dr. King's barber. I'm talking to real Dr. Marley. You his barber.
So the things he heard.
You go in the barbershop, we share stuff
right, the things he heard.
Without significant other at all.
Right.
So what to do? Speaking of ideas, I know you got a lot of ideas, and I know you got this great film. Talk to us in the last couple of minutes about your future projects. Are there any other projects that you have coming up that you want to sort of share with the SoundBalming team here?
Yeah. The most important one that we're working on is Normalized, the show. So, we got the pilot, we got the pitch deck, we got the show Bible. Now with all that is basically when you put together a TV show idea, you have to put together these documents. It's like putting together a proposal to go after work from the government. You got to put together these documents. We got it together. And so now it becomes, who wants it for this price? Oh, I build it myself. And that's just real talk. That's what it is. Either you're going to do it at this price or I build it myself. But when I build it myself, you will hate yourself for not giving me this price. You know what I mean? Because when I build it myself, I retain control and I let the authenticity stay. And so we're working on Normalized the show. And I want it to be, my people are always like, you're too impatient. I'm not guaranteed time. I got to go hard. So maybe within a year, the show is on. I really want it to be on your phone, your TV. And more importantly, the reason why the show is, I can't share too much with the show because there's proprietary stuff. It's different. It is very different, just like the podcast, just like the film. Our goal is to get you to think about yourself, to give a little grace to yourself, which I'm horrible at. I give myself no grace. Be more pathetic, love yourself, and then love your neighbor.
Well, man, you have inspired, and let me just tell you, CJ, you've inspired a group of people who are battling with mental health issues, a group of people who are dealing with bipolar disorder. You've inspired a group of people who have been wanting to step out on faith. I don't know why you're in this room today, who's ever watching us, be it YouTube or Facebook Live. I don't know why you're here, but I hope that you are taking something away from this conversation. If you want to step out on faith and create a podcast, if you want to do a film, you want to parlay that, if you want to just be a blessing to somebody else, because again, somebody at home who's struggling with what you're dealing with on a day-to-day basis is saying to themselves, if this brother can do it, I can do it. If this man can do it, this father, this husband, this friend, if he can do it, I can do it. We're living examples of coming from pretty rough environments, man. Like you, my dad wasn't involved in my life until later on. We had a relationship, but it wasn't the, what we'd expect.
You need a father. You need a father.
Yeah,
you need a father.
And so to see you living in this space and then saying, I'm not going to allow how they label or diagnose me to do that. So how can my listeners get in contact with you? They want to not only just see the film, if they want to hang out with you, talk to you, check out your podcast.
I would, it's great. You have an idea, you have a thought, get at me. I always pay it back. I'm not one of those people who won't respond. I will respond, and I'll respond in earnest and with thoughtfulness and care. Like, I care. So normalizedproductions.com is probably the easiest way. I got so many different websites. I had to put it all under one umbrella. So normalizedproductions.com. I don't even know I don't do IG and Facebook. I do it. I got a team that manages it. But if you go to the website, it'll have all the links below. Because it's the IG handle is like CJ Normalized. There's certain things about me that I have to learn how to do that I don't like to do. But Normalized Productions, you'll get at me. And obviously, if they want to get at me, they can reach you and you can connect them with me. But that's how you get at me. I'm not really good at selling myself the way I should. My people are probably going to get at me for this one.
No,
but hey.
You did an excellent job. I want to thank you for hanging out with me.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate what you're doing because it's we need to do this for each other. Right? We need to do this for each other.
Oh, no, I appreciate it, man. I want to thank Alex Bellamy and the team, your team, for reaching out to us, all the people that are there. Now, I want to sort of leave you with a couple of things. 5 helpful tips for Black men seeking mental health. You have nothing to prove. Treatment in all forms is entirely confidential. You can pick your mental health profession. There's no shame in seeking treatment. And counseling, therapy, and psychiatric treatment are not for crazy people. You are crazy when you don't want to take care of yourself. So I want to encourage you to go out and do something for someone other than yourself. You've been listening to SoundBalming. If you are anywhere in the DMV, check us out today at the Reginald Lewis Museum. Men of Change exhibit. We have 4 powerful storytellers. Check us out. I'm excited
What
about
time
that.
is that?
That's at 3 o'clock today, 3 o'clock to 4:30 if you're anywhere near. And if for those who don't want to come, you can't make it to the show today, the exhibit is there until August. It's celebrating people like me, like you, CJ, men all over the world that have changed. So I thank you, brother. Thanks for hanging out with me.
Thank you for having
Checking out SoundBalming. We out of here, man. Much love to you. Peace.